One of the most interesting ideas done by the Girls Frontline manga was the addition of 4 new commanders into Griffin and Kryuger PMC, along with giving the commander a face and character for the early Arknights Girls Frontline era of the game, making the total of completely original manga characters 5, because let's be real here, being based on the commander of the early Girls Frontline storyline is like being based on water. So how did these characters fare in the manga and anime adaptations of the Girls Frontline story? Well, it's complicated. Before we can even talk about these new commanders, we should have a look at the original. We don't really have a canon name for them, so I will just refer to them as the Commander. For fairness sake, I will compare the new commanders to Mr. Arknight Lowlight's Umineko's version of the Commander, as his iteration of the story is the only section that has been adapted in all 3 formats. The commander from this era of the game was... they're like... yeah, the bar is kind of low here. The only thing that Lowlight allowed the commander to characterize was some resilience and loyalty when the Griffin secret base was attacked. We should all know the story, yes? The commander is at the secret base to discuss Paraplui, and 4 calls, an explosion, and the commander gets hit by debris and is knocked out. Upon getting found, the commander is not too shaken despite waking up in a bombed room and in clear view of all the Zangief's forces charging the base, and accepts Kruger's Makarov, symbolically and physically accepting to fight on even though they had just been pretty badly injured not too long ago. Other than that, the commander might as well not exist. The dream for a manga commander would be to take any of the iterations of the commander from other writing eras, preferably Yuzong era, but that was not a thing when the manga first came into existence, and retroactively put the character the Chad Warrior Paragon into past chapters. Of course they wouldn't be as badass or experienced, but a large sense of camaraderie would exist and the savior complex that the commander kind of has would be stronger than ever. The obvious stand-in for the commander in the manga and anime is Genshin. And oh boy, there's a lot to unpack with her. Genshin in the manga can be characterized easily by the lazy genius character archetype. She's just kinda good at everything at the get-go. It is implied that Genshin did have a decent amount of leadership experience in the manga, although it's unclear how much, and meta-knowledge of the story would imply she has very little. Her lazy side is built upon meta jokes about the Girls Frontline game. She's depicted doing things like shifting work such as writing battle reports to Kalina and using the planning mode from the game to get some extra sleep time. This is most apparent in the anime where these 2 scenes were cut, leaving behind a Genshin that's just a perfect genius. But the thing is, her genius kinda stems from a stupid place. Genshin talking to her T-dolls. And she never actually does anything smart unless abusing the AI of dumb Zangief's drones counts as genius. The real problem with Genshin is that the world seems to bend itself backwards for her. The only reason we really call Genshin a genius is because people in the story call her one, and everyone in the story is just kinda dumb or breaks character to make Genshin look smarter. I would be totally fine with Genshin if she proved her genius by doing something smart, or just not have everyone tell us that she's some sort of super smart prodigy with nothing to back it. I think the thing that highlights how much of the manga and anime story bends the world to help Genshin is the iconic secret Griffin base raid. We should all know the story, yes? Genshin's at the secret base to discuss Paraplui, M4 calls an explosion, and Genshin gets hit by debris and is knocked out, and then all of a sudden she's just a top priority and everyone's objective is to do whatever they can to bring her to safety. And when she's nice and safe in some deep underground room, Kruger is just kinda waiting there for Genshin to get up to give her his gun, to only get half an acceptance, physically accepting the gun, but at the same time rejecting it by saying, "No, I don't want it." For that meta joke that she kinda looks like the T-doll Vector. Beyond her character archetype and meta jokes, Genshin has as much character as Lowlight's version of the in-game commander, and by that I mean like none at all. This is painfully obvious when she's in scenes with the other commanders, as someone like Commander Xi Jun or Commander Franklin gets distinct established character traits, quirks, and flaws, while Genshin just kinda sits there. You can kinda make the argument this makes her more like M4, but at least M4 became established as an unconfident crybaby rather than having no personality at all. While the current showing of Genshin's not that great, I never really cared that much because at least it's something more than no character, and it probably won't last until the story really takes off. I mostly treat Genshin as one of those characters that will get better later on. Now you may be thinking, why am I looking at the other commanders here? Shouldn't the comparison be between the commander and Genshin due to them sharing the same role in the story? It's like walking into a Wick McDonald's with a KXD sign. They're both fast food restaurants but completely different. Well, not really, as some of the attributes and jobs of the commander were split up among the other commanders from the manga. Genshin got the AR team from the commander and that's basically it. Commander Shoojoon is the best example of the other commanders representing the commander. In fact, he does a better job than Genshin. Xi Jun is another commander of Griffin originally added into the manga as a reference to the Friend Echelon system, and makes many appearances throughout the story of the anime and manga. The other commanders added by the manga tend to have a specialization. Xi Jun's specialization was Sniper T-Dolls, which is kinda strange since he has literally 0 pistol T-Dolls to support the snipers, but whatever. Xi Jun has been proven to be kind of a goofy character with his room filled of anime figurines and pin-up posters of T-Dolls. His main gag being not really a womanizer, but like flirting with Genshin and Kalina. You can describe it as a romantic maybe, with the anime making his relationship with Kalina potentially more serious. However, when push comes to shove, Xi Jun has been depicted as the most heroic and chat commander. We already recalled this scene twice before, but we should all know the story, yes? Xi Jun's at the secret base to discuss Paraplui. The commander Genshin gets a call from the outside, an explosion, and Genshin is knocked out. And what does this Chad do? Picks up a gun and tells everyone to retreat to safety while fighting off the encroaching Sanghav's forces. Hey, I'm sorry, what's some of the most distinguishing traits that the current Yuzong era commander has? Being a gunfight Giga Chad that tries all they can to save everyone, T-Dolls, humans, or whatever else? It is also shown that missions that Genshin doesn't do but the commander did do are completed by Xi Jun instead. Remember that one scene where we get to see his room and Super Sass has that very angry look to her? She was talking about the events of Emergency Chapter 3 from the game, with the audio playing at the start of the scene being from Emergency Chapter 3. Xi Jun also seems to have a better relationship with Kalina than Genshin does, you know, one of the major characters. Genshin and Kalina have a more professional relationship where they are partners at work, but that's kind of it. Like the one actual conversation they did have on the rooftop was just kind of awkward and dealt mostly with their work. However, Xi Jun seems to know how Kalina as a person operates and is at least close enough to where she seemed pretty happy that he asked her out on a date. Xi Jun has shown himself to be a lazy guy, but it's done in a more tasteful and unproblematic way than Genshin when she still had the trait. For example, why did he do Chapter 3 Emergency? Well, Genshin already swept through the area, so logically there should not be much danger there, so it would have been an easy job for him and his T-Dolls. What did Xi Jun do when some troublesome work came up? He passed it on to Kalina, but not for free like Genshin did in the manga. In both iterations of the story, Xi Jun did say he would reward her, which is presumably with money knowing Kalina's character. And let's not forget, he basically explicitly said, yeah, I'm lazy, in the Griffin secret base. But despite Xi Jun having a character and being my favorite manga commander, he's been created with death flags everywhere, so he can't really be a stand-in for the commander. As if the manga would try and do something crazy and switch the protagonist midway through the series. There are 2 surface level things about Xi Jun that are just huge red death flags yelling out that he won't survive past season 2, or chapter 10 of the game. Hopefully saying chapter 10 is enough of him for most people, but I'll do my no spoiler breakdown of my prediction theory. Xi Jun's backstory is that he was from the military before joining Griffin PMC, but he quit due to not liking how troublesome it was working with them. Chapter 10 also saw the introduction of a new T-Doll squad, consisting of only Sniper T-Dolls. Yeah, the changes to the game's storyline to make this happen is not out of the question, and it seems pretty intentional. But yeah, Xi Jun is his actual characterization and is a lot like the modern commander people actually care about. Commander Fedoril Camelot made his first appearance alongside Xi Jun as a reference to the Friend Echelon system, and makes occasional appearances throughout the manga and anime. However, not as much as Xi Jun. He is the designated night battle specialist, although he has been known to use machine gun T-Dolls, and T-Dolls using Russian guns. The easiest way to sum up Camelot's personality is extreme loyalty, camaraderie, and honor. He exemplifies the art book's canon of the Griffin Commander, lacking in basically everything, but he has the heart and personality that's compatible with his T-Dolls. It's actually kind of crazy because the manga and anime show that he's super compatible to lead his T-Dolls and with his adjutant PPK. They are literally the closest adjutant and commander in the series, but somehow I'm supposed to believe it when it tells me that Camelot knows nothing about PPK to show that Genshin is the best? His loyalty and big heart were best displayed by his actions in one scene. We should all know the story, yes? Commander Fedoril Camelot is at the secret base to discuss Paraplui. Commander Genshin gets a call from the outside, an explosion, and Genshin is knocked out. Even though he was the closest to the explosion and took most of the blast and shrapnel, Camelot rushed as fast as he could to protect his fallen comrade, disregarding his own safety to free her from the debris and rush her to safety. Camelot is shown to be a guy to do whatever it takes to save his comrades, T-Doll, human, or whatever else. Speaking of T-Dolls, Camelot was also characterized to be the most T-Doll loving commander, as he was the only one who wanted to see how the new models work, and it's established that he's a lot like Genshin and cares about everyone's T-Dolls, as caring about T-Dolls in PPK's mind meant being like Camelot. In fact, I think almost every scene with Camelot basically exists to show that he really cares about his T-Dolls. Light spoiler potentially for episode 1 or 2 of season 2, or an OVA, or Operation Cube. but it's shown that Camelot prioritizes the safety of his own T-dolls over his own, being willing to lower his own protection to make sure his squads are safer, or telling his sniper Overwatch to retreat when there was a hint of danger, even if it meant it left him open to advancing enemies. Camelot, above everything else, prioritizes the lives of his T-dolls under him and is truly a commander that all his T-dolls can trust. He embodies the humanitarian side of the commander. Of all the commanders that we know of from the manga, he's the only one I can see doing things like making T-doll bodies for the DG Max characters. However, Camelot is a bit too aloof and unaware to feel like a representation of the commander, which is perfectly fine. He was not designed to be one. He does, however, work well as a supporting character, albeit he might be a bit too comic relief and might tonally clash with the later story. Camelot, while not having any glaring death flags like Xi Jun, will probably not survive past season 3. Either symbolically or physically. There's a long road ahead, and the only logical thing to happen to his character is either to become ruthless like the jaded modern iteration of the commander, or his preference for caring about his T-doll's safety getting him killed. Commander Franklin made his first appearance in the Girls Frontline manga and anime as a replacement for the not pictured, basically non-existent, other Griffin commanders from the Parapluie meeting in the secret base. Franklin is different from the other commanders because we actually know nothing about his T-dolls. I think Franklin is more of a meta joke about players who only play logistics frontline, devoting their echelons to mostly generate resources on logistic runs and not actually playing the game. Comparing Franklin to the commander doesn't really feel right, as he was never built upon aspects of their actions and characters from eras after Lowlight left. He wasn't given the AR team like Genshin. He wasn't given their skill and relationships like Xi Jun, and he wasn't given their heart like Camelot. Instead, he got a joke, which actually makes Franklin a lot like Genshin. However, despite being born from a specific type of Girls Frontline player, Franklin got a surprising amount of character development. His character was best shown in one moment. We should all know the story, just kidding. We don't need another recap for the same scene again. But the attack on the base is a major point of the story where a lot of characters show how they deal with high stress and do or die scenarios. So what did Commander Franklin do in the attack? Well, he picked up everything, got out of the danger zone, and did what he does best, getting supplies so the frontline doesn't fall apart. A thankless job that puts him in the bad side of most of the combat-oriented commanders. This basically sets up his character for the rest of his screen time and will most likely be his thing until he dies, as because all of Franklin's peers have a negative perception of him, he tries really hard to show how important his contributions are to the overall effort. Franklin seems to butt heads with Xi Jun the most, as Xi Jun tends to rub in the fact that Franklin doesn't help out militarily. Commander Franklin is one of the examples of things that makes me really enjoy the Girls Frontline manga. Extra details that were glossed over in the game's story. He is quite literally a random Griffin commander, but the fact that he exists makes scenes like the secret base meeting feel more alive, and makes Griffin feel more like an actual PMC and not a small mercenary group that it feels like in the game. Oh, and death predictions, because I guess I'm doing that. Franklin will die in the movie that will be produced after season 2. His death will be in direct response to Xi Jun's death in the previous season. That or Franklin's gonna live forever as a joke character and will never die. And the final commander, Commander Kawasaki. She was introduced alongside Commander Franklin and is the commander we know the least about, even less so in the anime because her scenes were cut from it. She's the SMG specialist, but also apparently commands the Negev team. I don't know if the anime is retconning this or not because it followed the game's version of the chapter rather than the manga's. I don't know if I have some sort of brain deficiency now from rereading the same story 3 times in the past week, but I couldn't really pinpoint her character. Commander Kawasaki just kind of exists. She seems smarter than say Camelot and actually does her job to the fullest unlike Xi Jun. But outside of work stuff, she's kind of an enigma. This is mostly due to her never talking to her adjutant or other T-dolls personally enough to get a glimpse of her life outside of combat. In fact, she's the only commander to not get characterization in the Griffin base raid. Kawasaki does seem to be a bit more experienced to the world than all the other commanders, knowing the horrors of war and loss, as she lost her 3-year-old brother and her left leg. Kawasaki fits into the same boat as Franklin for me. They're just nice additions to make Griffin feel more alive. She's not really based on a joke or anything, but she really does feel like she fits into the post-World War III world of Girls Frontline. And honestly, I would love to know more about her, because she has an interesting perspective as someone who has been injured due to World War III, or small conflicts that happened from the fallout of the war. We know so little about Kawasaki that I can't make any real educated death predictions. I don't know, she'll die season 3. The commanders in general are one of the best additions made to the manga. Yes, they can be goofy at times, but it's fine for the lower stakes but still serious Sangus Griffin PMC conflict. Because let's be honest here, it's not that big of an issue since the military isn't getting involved. Surprisingly, some of them are closer to what I wanted out of Genshin than what Genshin delivered, but they do serve their role of making Griffin feel more alive well. Genshin herself has been stumbling due to strange decision making by the manga staff, but the anime fixed some of the problems with her character. She still has a long way to go and large shoes to fill. But the commander from the game was in a similar situation all those years ago, and look how they turned out. Mostly I'm glad these characters exist to give everyday commanders of Griffin a face and fleshing out the world of Girls Frontline, and that I can cope and pretend that Xi Jun has been the commander the whole time.